This is the story from Kobayashi-san. This story, like the others, is set in Japan, and it involves Suzuki-sensei directly. Most of the people Suzuki-sensei knows are researchers of one kind or another. That makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because work as a spirit medium requires a solid background in classical literature, folklore, and ancient history. So naturally, many of them hold down research careers alongside their spiritual work. Some are even university professors. And among those people, there was one woman who shared a story from her own past. She told it while traveling back to her hometown with Suzuki-sensei. This woman had grown up as the daughter of a Kannushi, a Shinto shrine priest, at a small, rural shrine. Now, let me explain the structure of a Shinto shrine for those who aren't familiar. A shrine has a Kannushi at the top, the head priest who oversees all the rituals and ceremonies. Below him are the miko, the shrine maidens. These days, larger shrines tend to hire part-time miko, or have female family members fill the role. But back then, the role was more traditional. We'll call this woman Sawako. When Sawako was a student, she absolutely hated being the daughter of a Kannushi. To her, it felt like living in another era entirely. There were endless rules of etiquette to follow, an old-fashioned lifestyle that felt suffocating, and the shrine building itself still operated the way shrines did generations ago. I should mention, most of the stories Suzuki-sensei shares tend to be from the past, because the people involved are getting on in years. This one is no different. Sawako was a student back in the early 1990s. Back then, even in regular households, plenty of families still didn't have a home computer. Some didn't even own a TV. And deep in the countryside, people were still living in ways that hadn't changed in decades. For Sawako, growing up in a shrine meant living that old-fashioned life every single day, and she hated every second of it. So she fought with her parents constantly. Every time she came home from school, her father, the Kannushi, would be waiting with the same lecture: "You're home. Now wash up and help out at the shrine. You don't have any older brothers or sisters, you know. You need to learn the proper rituals and etiquette. When you get married, you and your husband will inherit this shrine, and you'll need to take care of the deity enshrined here." It's the same speech you hear in every family with a long tradition or a family business to pass down. You're the only one who can carry this on. You have to inherit it. Sawako found it absolutely unbearable. She'd argue back, storm out, go hang out with friends, anything to avoid it. Then one day, she came home to find something strange. Her father, the Kannushi, was sitting out in the shrine courtyard in the middle of the day. Before I tell you what he was doing, let me explain something about shrine architecture, because every Shinto shrine follows the same basic layout. I'm pretty sure this structure is universal. When you enter a shrine, you pass through the torii gate at the entrance. From that torii, there is a perfectly straight path leading all the way to the Honden, the main hall. Along the sides, there may be smaller sub-shrines, and there are usually emma boards where visitors write their wishes and hang them up. Other buildings might be placed off to the sides at various angles, but the main entrance of the Honden always faces directly down that straight line from the torii. The reason is this: the Honden is where the deity actually resides. And that straight path from the torii to the Honden, especially down the very center, is the path of the gods. Out of respect, visitors and even priests do not walk down the center of that path. You step to either side. Only during special ceremonies, when the priests and shrine officials are conducting formal processions, do they walk the center. So imagine Sawako's shock when she found her father, the Kannushi, sitting right there in front of the Honden in the middle of the afternoon. He had a cup of sake set out beside him, and he was hunched over, puffing on a cigarette. This is a serious breach of sacred etiquette. It would be like walking into a Buddhist temple and finding the head monk lying on his back in front of the altar, drinking beer and smoking. That's the level of wrongness we're talking about here. It was completely out of character. Sawako's first thought was, has he lost his mind? Or maybe, is it money? Donations had been drying up lately, fewer and fewer parishioners came to pray. Maybe the shrine was struggling financially. Even if she was always fighting with him, he was still her dad, and seeing him like that gave her a pang of worry. She almost said something, but then stopped herself. He just sighed deeply and said, "You're home. Go on inside." Normally he would have launched into his usual nagging the moment she walked through the gate. But he didn't. That was strange enough that Sawako quietly went inside, thinking something must really be wrong. She shrugged it off and did her own thing until dinner time. At dinner, her father called out to her. "Hey, you want to take a trip to Tokyo?" "Tokyo? Right now? Out of nowhere?" She said yes immediately. Of course she did. Back in the 90s, going to Tokyo from the countryside was a huge deal. It was like heading up to the big city, the center of everything. Kids from rural areas dreamed about it. Sawako was instantly thrilled and started asking, "When? When are we going?" Her father said, "Let's go as soon as summer break starts. We'll head up and see the city." Sawako counted down the days, daydreaming about everything she wanted to do and see. But somewhere on the train ride up, a nagging thought crept in. What if this is a trap? What if Dad is taking me to Tokyo to hand me off to someone who'll train me in the shrine arts? He did act unusually cheerful today. But then departure day came and her father showed up looking genuinely excited. This stiff, serious priest who normally looked like he'd walked out of a centuries-old painting was wearing his sunglasses up on his forehead like a tourist. That had to be real, right? And it was. They had a genuinely wonderful time in Tokyo. They talked, explored, laughed together. For a few days, all the tension between them simply melted away. On the last day, though, as they were heading home, Sawako felt a creeping unease. There's a well-known pattern in Japan. Families dealing with difficult circumstances sometimes go out and spend everything they have on one last beautiful outing, and then on the way back, make a terrible decision. It's a tragic pattern that appears with unsettling frequency. And the fact that her father had suggested this trip so suddenly, on that particular day when he'd been sitting in front of the shrine drinking and smoking, the memory came back to her, and she thought, no. Dad wouldn't do that. He didn't. They came home safely, and actually, the trip had done something wonderful. It had repaired their relationship almost overnight. Sawako was clinging to her dad's arm, laughing, and he was chuckling warmly as the train rocked them homeward. At some point, she dozed off. And when she half woke up, she saw her father resting against the window, staring out at the passing landscape. His face was completely still. And he was crying, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. She had never, ever seen him cry before. She froze, unsure if she was really seeing it. Then his expression shifted back to normal, as if nothing had happened. After they got home, things were different. He never nagged her again about learning the shrine rituals. No more lectures about etiquette, inheritance, finding a good husband. Sawako thought it was a little strange, but honestly, it was a relief. She'd never wanted to do any of it anyway. Life went on quietly after that. Then one night, an ordinary night, she was asleep when she heard a crash of footsteps thundering up the stairs. Someone taking them 2, 3 at a time. Bang! Her door flew open so hard it nearly came off its hinges. Her father burst in, panting, gasping for breath. Sawako! Sawako, wake up! Dad, what's wrong? Is the shrine on fire? What happened? He grabbed her by the shoulders. Listen to me carefully. Take this. He thrust a piece of paper into her hand. You need to go here. Right now. Don't stop anywhere else on the way. Don't come back. Just get there. He started frantically packing a bag for her, some snacks, some cash, underwear, whatever his hands could grab. Sawako was in middle school at the time. Kids back then were a bit more mature for their age than they are now, but even so, she was barely awake, trying to make sense of what was happening. She stumbled out of the house with her bag. And then, this is the part that's so hard to explain, she got a few steps away and felt absolutely certain she had forgotten something critically important. She couldn't explain what. There was nothing missing from her bag, nothing she could point to. But the feeling was overwhelming. She turned around and started heading back to the shrine. The shrine sat away from the town, set back in the hills. As she ran back toward it, she started hearing a voice. "Hey! Don't go. Don't go there." She stopped. No one was around. She kept walking. The voice came again. "Stop. Don't go. You shouldn't go there." Her skin went cold. There was no one. But the feeling inside her, "I need to go back, I forgot something important," was stronger than the fear. She pressed on. She reached the shrine. It was absolutely silent. Unnaturally silent. Sawako would later tell Suzuki-sensei that looking back on it now, she recognizes that as her sixth sense, her spiritual intuition, screaming at her to turn around. Everything in her body was warning her, "Do not enter." But she went in anyway. Because she was certain she had forgotten something. The moment she passed through the torii gate, the voice stopped. Cut off completely, mid-sentence. Sawako thought, "It was evil spirits trying to trick me." Dad always said that when something important is happening, malevolent spirits try to interfere and lead you astray. They can't pass through a torii gate. That's why the voice stopped. "I made it." She ran to her family's living quarters next to the shrine. The door was unlocked. The house was completely quiet. She stood there in the stillness, trying to remember what she had come back for. What did I forget? What was so important? She couldn't remember. Her mind was blank. Then, from behind her, she heard a voice, low, intimate, right at her ear. "Go to the Honden. It's in the main hall. Go to the Honden. That's where it is." And somehow, that made total sense to her in the moment. Of course. I left it in the Honden. She went down the corridor and opened the door to the main hall. The shrine was dark and quiet, it wasn't large enough to keep sacred lamps burning around the clock. And then her father's hands grabbed her shoulders from behind. "What are you doing here? I told you to get out. Don't turn around, just run." He yanked her forward. "We have to go. Right now. Move." Sawako was about to answer, but then she heard it. From inside the Honden. A sliding sound, wet and slow, like something large moving across the floor. Her father threw himself on top of her, pulling them both to the ground. He pressed her down, covering her body with his hand firm on the back of her head, holding her face to the floor. "Don't make a sound. Don't move." The sliding sound passed over them, whoosh, and then, smaller sounds. Tap. Tap. Tap tap tap. Tiny, deliberate. Like fingers walking across the floor. Or something testing each surface. Sawako lay there shaking, desperately wanting to know what it was, too terrified to look. After a long, terrible silence, her father pulled her to her feet. He grabbed her hand and ran. They ran flat out from the shrine all the way to the train station at the edge of town. He pressed the note back into her hand, the address he'd written earlier, and put her on the train. "You have to get to this address. Don't stop anywhere. Don't come back. Call me when you arrive." Sawako sat in her seat, completely dazed. Then the tears started coming. Her own father was sending her away in the middle of the night, alone, with nothing but a bag of hastily packed snacks and a piece of paper. An older passenger noticed her crying and gently asked what was wrong. When Sawako explained that her father had sent her, the woman said, if your father sent you, it's not something bad. He has his reasons. Trust him. Sawako eventually arrived. The address was the home of the Grand Master, the teacher of Suzuki-sensei's own mentor. This man was a practitioner of Onmyodo, the ancient Japanese tradition of divination and spiritual practice rooted in Taoist cosmology, working with yin-yang theory, star charts, and esoteric arts that stretch back centuries in Japan. He was serious and accomplished. When the Grand Master opened the door and saw Sawako standing there, he simply said, "Good. You made it safely. Come in." He let her call her father. The Kanushi picked up on the first ring. "You made it? Good. I'll explain everything later. For now, stay there with the master. I'm going to call the school and arrange for you to transfer. You always wanted to study in Tokyo, right? You can go to school there. Just, don't come back to see me. There are things happening here. Adult things. You can't be here right now." He said goodbye gently, and hung up. Sawako was young, but she wasn't a child. Part of her wondered if he was pushing her away for reasons she didn't understand. But the Grand Master watched over her, kept her busy and safe, and she spoke with her father by phone regularly. Life settled into a new rhythm. Then one night, without warning, the Grand Master came to her room in the dark. "Sawako. Listen to me. You need to go to your father. Now." "What? You told me not to go back. You said there were adult things happening. Your father is going to pass away tonight." She was wide awake in an instant. She rushed downstairs wanting more information, but the Grand Master only said, "It's not yet time for the full explanation." He sent her on her way. She arrived at the shrine. Her father was lying in the center of the honden, arms and legs stretched out, completely still. He had already been gone for some time. He had died alone, inside the shrine. The official explanation was natural causes, his health had been deteriorating. But Sawako couldn't accept that. He had shown no signs of illness. They had spoken on the phone just days ago and he had been perfectly fine. There was nothing, no warning, no symptoms, nothing. So she began to study. She trained under the Grand Master, assisting him, observing, slowly building her knowledge. She wasn't formally his student, he didn't teach her directly, but she accompanied him, handled smaller matters when he allowed it, and absorbed everything she could. When the master judged that she had learned enough, he finally told her the truth. "You know that the number of parishioners at your father's shrine had been declining for years, don't you?" Sawako remembered. The donation box had been nearly empty. Hardly anyone came to pray. "Here's what you need to understand," he said. "The gods we serve are not always powerful. A deity's strength depends on the faith of its believers. A god with no worshippers grows weak. So the old gods, the forgotten gods, the gods enshrined in small rural places, even when the Kanushi performs all the rituals faithfully, those gods may not have enough power to offer real protection. Your father was protecting that shrine. But in the same area, around that time, something terrible happened nearby. And from that event, something was born." He paused. In the Shinto tradition, there are what we call Yaoyorozu no Kami, 8 million gods. Anyone and anything can become a god. You don't need virtue or good deeds. Sometimes a person dies carrying a deep, unresolved resentment, and that resentment lingers for so long, accumulating power, that it transforms into a divine being, or something that mimics one. Sometimes an animal living near a spiritually charged location absorbs that energy and becomes something more. Something was born out of what happened near your father's shrine. It wandered, looking for a place to settle. And it found your father's shrine, a spiritually stable location, a sacred site, but with a weakened deity. It pushed the original god out. And then it moved in. Sawako felt cold. When something like that takes over a shrine, the master continued, the Kanushi bound to that shrine is also bound to the new entity. Your father couldn't simply walk away from it. He was the priest of that shrine, which meant he was now the priest of that thing. He couldn't cut the cord easily. But you were different. You had refused to learn the shrine arts. You hadn't made any spiritual commitment to that place. You hadn't been initiated into the bond. Which meant, at that moment, that was actually your protection. Your father knew something was wrong. He could feel it taking hold. He got you out while he still could. Quickly, before it could notice you. He looked at her steadily. Because this is the thing about Japanese gods, even the divine ones. They can be enormously powerful within their domain. But they are not omniscient. They do not know everything outside of what they control. You can hide from a god, if you know how. If it doesn't see you, it cannot harm you, and it cannot help you either. Right now, that entity at your father's shrine has no knowledge of your existence. I worked hard to keep you hidden from it. Your father asked me to. The master let the silence sit. Do you really need to go back there? Sawako thought about it for several days. She did. She came to Suzuki-sensei, who introduced her to this story. But she hadn't come for the first time, she had already attempted several rituals and spiritual interventions over the years. Purification rites, exorcism ceremonies, formal offerings, even curses. None of it had worked. Whatever had taken up residence in her father's shrine was deeply, stubbornly rooted. This time, Sawako arrived with a clear smile on her face. I'm here to burn it. She brought someone with her, a quiet, unassuming woman. The kind of person you might pass on the street and never give a second thought to. Who is she? Suzuki-sensei asked. She's an ordinary person, Sawako said. Not spiritually trained. Not a practitioner. But she has a very specific quality. Sawako paused. Fire loves her. And she loves fire. They went to the shrine. Sawako had already prepared everything. She had marked a perimeter using Shimenawa rope, the sacred braided cord used in Shinto rituals to designate boundary lines. Inside the rope, the entire shrine grounds. Outside, everything else. She showed the quiet woman the map. Everything inside this boundary, can you burn it? All of it? The woman's voice trembled slightly with what sounded like barely contained joy. May I burn everything inside? Yes. Leave nothing. The woman looked almost moved to tears. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. I'll get started. And she walked in. Suzuki-sensei looked at Sawako. Burning things is a legitimate purification method, fire cleanses. Agricultural burning, the ritual burning of ofuda charms and cursed objects, the burning of symbolic items during memorial rites, all of this is ancient and accepted practice. It wasn't the concept of burning that was surprising. It was the scale of what Sawako was asking. An entire shrine complex, reduced to ash. And this woman, volunteering for it as if she had been waiting her whole life to be asked. Then the fire started. It went up instantly. Not like a fire catching gradually, it was as if the entire interior erupted at once. The flames shot upward, visible from nearly a kilometer away where Sawako and Suzuki-sensei had retreated. They watched the blaze reach toward the sky, and both had the same thought, this is going to spread. The trees. The surrounding hillside. The fire would jump the perimeter in seconds. But it didn't. They moved closer. The fire burned at a ferocious, almost unbearable intensity. The heat was like standing next to an open furnace, but the flames stopped cleanly at the Shimenawa rope. Not a single spark crossed the line. Trees on the outer edge of the rope stood untouched. The rope itself remained intact. Is she going to be okay in there? Suzuki-sensei asked. Then the door opened. The quiet woman stepped out, expression calm and deeply satisfied, like someone who had just finished the work they were born to do. It's done. The fire will go out on its own in about 3 more hours. That's what was arranged. Arranged? No firefighters had been called. There was no mechanism to put it out. But 3 hours later, to the minute, the fire simply stopped. The shrine grounds were ash. Nothing remained. The woman smiled, turning a towel over in her hands. "Please call me if something like this ever comes up again," she said, and left. Suzuki-sensei watched her go. "What was she?" she asked Sawako. Sawako smiled again. "She's what you might call a pyromaniac. Someone with an overwhelming compulsion to set fires. But here's the thing, she happens to be someone that fire genuinely loves back. That's uniquely useful. You have no idea how long it took me to find her." After it was all over, Sawako went to the ruins of her father's shrine alone. She knelt in the ash. And she prayed. That was the end of the story. "That one had some serious scale," Suzuki-sensei said. "A little bit," Kobayashi-san replied, with a quiet smile. Suzuki-sensei asked, "You mentioned you might have more to share. Is it connected to this story, or something separate?" "The woman who came with her, the one who set the fire. There might be a story about who she is, when I have a chance to put it together properly. We'll be waiting patiently, Kobayashi-san. Thank you so much for tonight, another legendary story. We're truly grateful. Equals 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 equals. End of EP1. Equals 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 equals